currently actually building a senior co-housing project in Oakland, a 41-unit project that I've been working on for like 4 years now. Came to co-housing as an idea when I was actually in college, and then just serendipitously wound up in a career that's allowing me to make it happen. So to kind of, they weren't together, the two thoughts, but so it's pretty much been since like 04, I've been stirring the pot to make co-housing happen. And Janie, when she'd be here, she's a planner, so she's all on the like land use side of the universe. So I'm not sure how many people know what co-housing is, but it's an intentional, collaborative housing in which residents actively participate in the design and operation of their neighborhoods. So I often get asked, well, how is this different than a condo? And it's significantly different in that you're choosing to live in community, you want to know everybody, you want to participate. So like, oh, the participation's not on there, sorry. Well, you actively participate. So there's decision making around how you operate, there's decision making around functionality of the buildings, there's decision making around costs of things, you know, what the community is purchasing. It's beyond just knowing your neighbors as you go down to the mailbox. You know, if someone doesn't show up to community dinner, you go, where's Susie? And you're not, she doesn't need me. You know, you're knocking on their door. So it's really intentional community, which is, you know, some people say, well, you shouldn't use that phrase because that means, you know, it's a particular flavor of community, right? Which it might be, but it's the intention is to be in community. So it provides the privacy we're accustomed to within the community we seek. So that's another question we often get, like, do I have my own space? You absolutely have your own unit, fully functioning kitchen, bathroom, whatever. So, you know, and then some, and then there's lots of community space, which we'll talk about. And then residents consciously commit to living as a community, and that's probably, I would say, the hallmark of it, is that you, in the community, actually, you know, it requires participation. If you don't want to, you know, really be responsible to each other, if you really don't want to actually know everybody, if you don't want to break bread with people, if you kind of just want to do your own thing, I would say co-housing is really not for you. So features of co-housing: cooperative community and a participatory process, owned and governed by the members, like I said, private homes, and lots of shared common spaces. And so again, I've had people say to me, oh, this would be so great for my mom, but she really doesn't want to have to go to meetings, or this would be so great for my friend, but they don't really, you know, want to have to like sit and be part of a committee. So it demands, the nature of the beast demands that you be willing to, again, be committed to the community and work with the community and want to make decisions with the community, learn how to make decisions with the community as well, because not everybody comes with the skill set to be able to sit in a meeting with 40 other people and know how to come to consensus. Typical amenities, a walkable neighborhood. We're very focused on trying to find a site that you don't have to get into your car to go get a container of milk. So it's, you know, it's a little challenging actually, but are you joining us?
I am.
You want to sit?
I'm waiting for someone.
Oh, okay. All right, and there's a sign-in sheet. Oh, right there. So walkable neighborhood, or at least very close to public transportation, is what we're looking on, so you don't have to have a car. Common facilities are typically a community kitchen, and the focus of that is breaking bread with people is a real community builder. So, and then the community decides how often they want to have their community dinners. So like at my project in Oakland, they haven't moved in yet, we're still under construction, but the community's been meeting for like at least 3 years now, and they're gonna start out with 3 meals a week, and they'll see how that goes, and they'll either decide we wanna do it more, or they'll wanna do it less, or, you know, and whatever system they're putting in place to make that happen, again, they'll decide how to make that happen, and then they'll evaluate in 3 months or whatever, and move forward from there.
Do you want us to hold questions?
Sure. No, it's okay. You can ask questions, yeah.
I'm just curious, you've been referencing this Oakland group. people who came together knowing they wanted to do co-housing, and all whatever they're building is specifically for them, or is it more than what they need and they're open to?
No, they knew that they were buying specifically into co-housing. This project went a little different than most, I would say, typical projects go, in that my client, who came and still is in the senior care business, he has 3 facilities in Alameda, and he came to the idea of co-housing, I don't know where along in his career, but he and I met in a workshop in 2007 that Chuck Durrett, who I call Mr. Co-Housing, who's an architect, and it was a 5-day workshop basically around issues of aging. And we met there, and we kept running into each other at other conferences and workshops, etc. Well, he finally found, and he was actively looking for a site to put co-housing up. And he found a site in 2010, he hired me in 2011. So he actually got the project going before he had the community. But he had been giving the same 5-day workshop of his own flavor, like a 3-day aging gracefully or aging successfully kind of course. So he had a whole database of people who were interested. So he didn't need to, in having resources, he didn't need to wait to have 6 people, 10 people, however many people to get going.
So maybe let me ask a different question. If we had, I'm going to make this up, 10 people who wanted to live in a co-housing community, they could hire you.
Yes.
Okay.
And away we go.
Got it.
I'd like it to be that easy, but that's essentially it. Essentially it. Yeah, it either takes a bunch of people with a, resources. I can't, you gotta have resources to make it happen. In this case, I had a person had the resources to make it happen, and so he started building the community while he got the project going. I would say the benefit of that approach was the people who have bought in did not have to wait for 2 years of very painful approval process. And it was painful. So, go ahead.
Who's sponsoring this meeting?
Me.
Okay, and as
I'm just sitting here as a citizen. I just want to see co-housing happen. I happen to have the professional wherewithal to actually make it happen. But, it's just me and my cohort, Janie, who's not here yet. So, yeah, we're just trying to make it happen. So if 10 people got together and said, hey, let's go, it'd be like, hey, let's go,
And the painful part is zoning and getting through the county?
Well, my project was painful because we're on the water. My project's right on the Alameda estuary, so, planning was great. 15 minutes we were in and out. They loved the project, but there's a state agency called BCDC that rules the first 100 feet of any waterfront property, and they were a little tricky. And then I had the Army Corps also, because we're rebuilding up here in a dock, but they weren't too, but it was just very, it was, and then this, so yeah. I am not going anywhere near water at this point. We're done with building on the water. So, you had a question?
Yeah, do you consider a place like Spring Lake Village co-housing?
No, that would not be co-housing. Now, there's no reason why, in my view of the world, an organization like Episcopal Senior Communities, and we're hoping to meet with them to get them to offer co-housing as another offering in their offerings. I think they've got the wherewithal to develop property, so I don't think they know anything about co-housing. We've actually, yesterday, we did a presentation to a Council on Aging Committee down in Marin, and ESC's shared housing person, they have a shared housing program. She was on the committee, so she just got a whole, load of co-housing information, and we're hoping to meet with her to get to like ESC. Like when I took my training in 2007, there was a group from Pennsylvania that had continuing care retirement community, like an 800-acre community, that they were interested in then putting a co-housing project within their offerings, which I think is another way to get there as well.
Could I speak a little bit to
Oh,
that
please
question?
do. Yeah, please do.
My name's Iris. I live in a co-housing community here in Cotati, and have been involved with co-housing since 1998. The key difference is not so much in the physical buildings, but is in the social contract. So I've lived in a regular condominium and I live in a co-housing community now, and the key difference is in what we expect of ourselves and each other in terms of how we interact, how much we're with each other. And so, yeah.
Well, that's that participatory, you know, you're again, it's beyond just knowing your neighbor. Like Spring Lake, yeah, they have a community house there and all that, and they sell you a bank of services, right, that says, okay, you're gonna live here, you're gonna pay us this much money per month, when you get this many services. In co-housing, you know, you're deciding what the HOA, what the group funding will purchase. You know, so if it's an aging in community, if it's a senior co-housing project, you know, somewhere down the line, you might say, hey, we're all gonna chip in and pay for a caregiver to come every day, versus a have to thing. You know, you're more in control.
On that note though, I mean, I lived communally in the 60s and 70s, and it was always the people with the dominating personalities that like ran the show. And so if you were shy or you know, you weren't eloquent, you know, you were, anyway.
Well, I'm switching to here, because
Okay.
this is a picture,
Cooperative.
so cooperative
Cooperative
community,
community.
okay? So you actually get training, communities, you know, people don't naturally, I won't say, that's a general statement. A lot of people don't show up with the skill set to be able to sit in community and have productive discussion that leads to, you know, productive decision making. So what you build into a budget in a project is, Eris is a trainer, actually.
I'm a consensus trainer.
Yeah, so you know, you build in the budget that kind of training. So by the time you get to having some meetings, you've had some training. This is, I mean, it's hard to tell here, but they're holding up colored cards. So that's one methodology of decision making, is this colored card methodology. There's dynamic governance, there's all kinds of systems for governing, and typically the community will decide that too. There's like nobody outside saying this is how you're gonna do it, right? So there might be a committee that does research on things like governance, and then they bring that to the community, and then the community votes. So there's a lot of training around how to do that, and to help give voice to the people who are shy, you know, because we're not all noisy like me. You know?
Are there state requirements relative to co-housing? I'm assuming it's supposed to be a corporation or something that owns the complex?
Well, typically it's, while it's in development, there's an LLC set up, because, you know, you need a legal entity to hold the funds, right? So there's a development LLC, which then dissolves once the whole project's built out, and then you're an HOA.
Okay.
So it legally looks like a condo,
Like
but
a
you
condo,
totally
like-
function,
yeah.
you function to, you know, way beyond what a condo does, right?
Okay.
My project actually explored the legal structure as a cooperative, but it's very hard to get financing in California for cooperatives. But it was, we liked the concept of it, and again, there are people around who give you training on how to function as a cooperative, because it's a little different. So that's just, you know, that's just a pretty picture of a group working together. So benefits, so we're focused on actually age-restricted co-housing, 55 plus. The 55 is a legal age restriction, and there's 62, but we're going to go for 55. And the reason is, because people say, oh, well, you know, as I age, I want to have kids around, I want to be intergenerational. In co-housing, you're making decisions around, you know, like how you're functioning. So let's take the community dinner. When there's kids, community dinner might be at 5. But when you're 70, you might not want to have community dinner at 5. You know, or the room in the common house that you want to have be a library might need to be a play space, because, you know, there's all these kids here, and decisions should be made around children. So somewhere along the way, someone said, I don't want decisions for my day-to-day to be around children. So that's why I'm definitely an advocate of having it separate. You know, I would love 2 side-by-side, family and senior side-by-side, and we're actually looking for sites that can potentially accommodate that, so then anybody who shows up to a meeting we can say yes to, rather than, oh, this will be age restricted. There's also a benefit on parking requirements if you're age restricted. Oakland, because we're age restricted, our parking requirement got cut in half. Because they're assuming not everybody's going to work, not everybody has to get in the car, you know, so we only had to come up with 1-to-1 parking versus 2-to-1, which is what most ordinances are. So there's a benefit to it. So another benefit is there's a gentleman, Dr. Bill Thomas, who is a gerontologist. Thank you. And he's actually developed this, you know, this idea of the greenhouse, which is, you know, he's looked at like nursing homes and stuff and how to make them more humane for people, literally by just putting plants in them. Anyway, but he's named what he calls the 3 plagues of aging, which are loneliness, boredom, and helplessness. And you can go, you know, then extract, you know, isolation and depression and all when you're home alone without community around you. So cohousing is just such the right answer, because again, you're like in community. Chuck Durrett, who I mentioned before, had emergency brain surgery earlier this year. And before they released him from the hospital, they said, well, do you have any other, he lives in cohousing, he said, do you have anybody else around besides your wife to help take care of you? And he's like, yeah, about 30 other people to be there. This woman, Annie Russell, who lives in a cohousing community in Colorado, she had a broken hip. Same thing, we don't want to send you home, we don't know, you know, who do you have around you to take care of you, and well, there's like 20 other people, you know, again, you're in it together, right? So it's more than just knowing your neighbor. So loneliness, you know, if you're home alone and you feel like you need connection, you just go down in the common space and there's a really good chance you're gonna, you know, see somebody or just bump into them on the way that you're walking there, because the design is always intended to create interaction. A purposeful life instead of boredom. So like I said, you need to participate in meetings and decision making. There's often a work day, but there's also other ways to contribute to the community. If you want to lead a singing circle, if that's your thing and that's how you want to contribute, if you want to run a book club, if you want to bring in a yoga class, if, you know, whatever is your passion, you have an opportunity to do that and make that be part of your community participation. I don't know if anything like that goes on a frog song, but
the list is endless. Things
right.
going
So
around there, yeah.
So it's, you know, keeps the brain active, keeps you active. You want to do a walking group, or, you know, spur of the moment, let's go to a movie. You know, it feeds on each other. And then helplessness. So again, there's the self-management component of cohousing, but there's also the self-determination, which says this is how we want to live. This is how we want to function. You know, versus again, if you lived in either assisted living or a continuing care retirement community, they're telling you when you're eating dinner, and they're telling you what services you have to buy, and you know, there's a lot of them telling you, whereas this is you're guiding yourself, you're deciding yourself what you want to, how you want to shape your life with others. So this is just a little graphic that we put together because we're talking about different benefits of cohousing, or as compared to like the CCRC or condo. You know, you get different pieces, but the cohousing part seems to like bring everything together. So we talked about self-determination, environmental conservation. So there's you're living in a smaller unit. And the idea is that you have a smaller unit because you have all this other common space, right? So you don't need 3,000 square feet, you know, and, but also down to, you know, who's going to Costco for the toilet paper run, right? You know, so 4 people go in one car, or one person does the shopping for 3 or whatever, and not everybody needs their own set of tools because everybody has pooled their tools and you've culled through what's the best of the best. And so your footprint just gets smaller and smaller because you're sharing resources. You're not sharing money, but you're sharing resources, and you're thinking about each other as things get done. So there's ultimately an environmental benefit to that, as well as a financial benefit to that. I know in Oakland, they're thinking about having a shared vehicle. You know, people are coming with whatever cars they're coming, but they're also thinking about getting a shared van. That, you know, 10 people want to go to the movies, 3 cars don't have to go, right? Go ahead.
It's interesting you said we're not sharing money, clearly, and how is title held? And is there any survivorship, or how does all that work?
Well, you own your own unit just like you would own a condo. It's exactly the same legal structure
Okay.
as a condo. And then survivorship is just you deed it, you know, whoever's going to inherit it, and tell me if I'm
Right.
getting something wrong here. In an age restricted, at least if it's a couple, at least one person has to be 55.
Okay.
That's about the only restriction there. Then beyond that, I don't know that I've heard this for sure, like in a when we were researching co-ops, you did have to get approved to be the next person buying in by the community.
Okay, in a condominium, you cannot, the group cannot do that because
Okay.
of fair housing laws. Nobody can tell you who you can sell your unit to or leave your unit to.
Okay.
In reality, if you don't want to live like this, you don't want
Right,
to
it's
buy one of
self-selecting.
these units.
Yeah.
And we've never had, we've had a few people leave and we've had a few deaths in our community, but we've never had anything be sold to someone who didn't.
And what has happened with the deaths?
So the two deaths we had in our community, one of them, his daughter and her family were also part of the community. And so she inherited his unit and rents it out to someone who had been part of another family on the property. And then the other death, she did not have any family and was very good friends with another person who lived in the community who ended up getting her unit.
So you just answered another
So-
question, which is, if we wanted to include people who do not have resources, but those of us who have resources can create something that's rentable to them.
Knock yourself out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Rohnert age restricted?
No,
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
we're family oriented, although we are rapidly graying because we haven't had a lot of turnover and the kids are all growing up and moving out.
Right.
Right.
That's practically about a small enough setup in a condominium or subdivision. You can own all of them and make it up if you want to, create them, and there's no law.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, you don't.
Banks tend to not like it if too many of your units are rentals.
Right.
So there's that issue in terms of
Sure.
financing.
But you can certainly say, okay, you know, we want to leave 3 units for rental or whatever, you know, because like and another thing that happens too is typically there's 1 or 2 units built that are left open for caregiver in the future, for families coming to visit, you know, things like that. So there's always an extra, you know, built into it. Let's see, financial and social sustainability. So we started talking about the financial benefit of it, and one of these days I'm going to create a comparison chart. But again, there's the sort of intangible, you know, upside benefit to even things like bulk internet service. You know, the Oakland people are looking at that now. You know, like, are we going to do it all individually? And I'm like,
We
no,
have it
somebody needs to research buying it in bulk. You know. So there's that upside financial benefit, and of course the social sustainability in that you've got community like right there. You're connected to people. And I don't know who I learned this from, but that supposedly a lot of people who live in co-housing are introverts, which is a very, I think that's a very interesting piece of data. But it kind of makes sense in that, you know, you have your own private space, but you know, we all want to be connected in some way, shape, or form. And you've got that, you know, okay, I need to be connected. I need to have a conversation. You just got to walk outside your door. You know, you don't have to work hard. It's not daunting. It's like, oh my God, I have to go talk to a stranger. You know, so it kind of makes sense. I would say it's a very safe environment. And you do, you know, and they'll, I'm sure, balanced by people who are noisy and very outgoing. I see that in my Oakland project. The new member bought in after about 20 people had already bought into it, and she came in like gangbusters, and I was just like, oh my God. But it seems to all be working out okay. Self-determination, active participation, we talked about self-management, we talked about meaningful shared space. So the community decides, you know, do we want a library? Do we want a music room? Do we want a gym? You know, whatever, you know, it's whatever is going to support it. Frog Song has a fabulous workshop, gorgeous workshop that they put together. In Oakland, they're designating one of the common rooms for a meditation room. and they decided they wanted a gym, so they're gonna do a gym. And then where we were gonna, you'll see a slide of the common space, where we were just doing an interior atrium for planting, they've decided that they wanna have one of those resistance pools, you know, that you swim in place kind of thing. So that's not in the budget. They decided to do that. They're pulling their resources to make that happen, you know, so they're creating the space that they want. Obviously community, and I think all of this leads to enhanced well-being. And I actually went to a building conference a couple of years ago that was it was about housing for what they call the silver tsunami. That's the lingo in the industry, silver tsunami. And it was like one marketing research panel after another, how there's so much need and so much opportunity and so much need. But a lot of it was around the language, which is different than I think our parents, and where we really are focused on our wellness and having balance in our lives and caring about having connection and community and things like that. And again, I think cohousing is just a great opportunity for that. There's having, again, social connection, which leads to better emotional well-being, and as I think we get older, our spiritual needs become more evident, and not necessarily religious. Like, I was thrilled to hear that they were going to create a meditation room, like, fabulous. We talked about environmental, occupational. If you're still working, it's very supportive. If you have skills that you can contribute to the community, like if you were a bookkeeper and you want to be the bookkeeper for the community, like, yay, and intellectual and physical, so it really supports a wellness of how to live.
I'm curious, I'm assuming there would need to be some kind of development loan, construction loan, etc. So does the LLC need to, as an LLC, qualify for the loan, and then if you own your individual unit, some people want to buy it outright, and some people want to carry a mortgage?
Right, so there's, at the very beginning of a project, you need what's called money for soft costs. So that's like hiring, like me, hiring the architect, the engineer, this whole slew of people that you need to do a project. That you cannot borrow money for. So that has to come either out of potential members' pockets or partnering with a developer who can put that upfront that money. So like my client, he's not a developer by trade, but had the resources to get going without having to have 10 people buy in. So you just need that's working capital. You can't, and then the LLC qualifies for the construction loan.
Okay.
And then that gets dissolved when the whole project's bought out. And then everybody goes and arranges their mortgages. You try to find like one mortgage broker for the project, and they work with everybody.
Gotcha.
Exchange Bank.
Exchange
Did
Bank.
both our construction loan and most of our mortgages, and they were really good to work with.
Yeah.
So the mortgage for the individual units, but then there's all the common space.
That's built into the cost of your unit.
Of your unit. Okay.
Right. So everybody, based on your square footage, you own, it's all the math is in it. Isn't like another loan on the common space. Everybody owns it.
It's not like that.
Give me an example of soft costs.
Like, what are they?
Yes. No, cost. What are?
Oh, well, it
Money.
kind of depends on the project. So,
A range again? Range?
well, the rough proportion, soft costs tend to be anywhere from 25 to 40% of your project costs. So if you have a $20 million project, your soft costs are anywhere from 5, do some math quick people, 5 to what, somewhere, a lot of money. Let's just put it, a lot of money. Because you've got, again, your architect and all your engineers, you've got all your permitting costs. Hooking up water in Oakland was almost $500,000.
So it was not existent on the land.
Doesn't matter. When you're doing a new building, doesn't matter what was there. When you're doing a new building, my project, the previous building was a restaurant. So there was water to the site, but now there's 41 units. So when you go to say the water company, East Bay Mud in this instance, okay, here's my new project. There's, they charge you for the meters, they charge you for the hookup, for that they're going to supply water. So that was close to $400,000. And then there's sewer, and then there's fire, close to $500,000 just to get water. Yeah. The building permit alone was over $200,000. So it's not, it's, you know, this is not for the faint of heart, let me tell you.
One way that we managed that when we were building our project was, so when you joined and made a commitment, you had to put in, you know, a chunk of money. Not all of us had money liquid because our money was in our existing houses. So we set up a system whereby the people who did have liquid money could put in more and get a small bit of interest for it. So it was less interest than if we were borrowing money, or maybe we did it as a discount. I forget exactly.
Yeah.
But it was enough for it to be worth it for them to take it out of their other investments and put it into the project. And I think one or two people had some family members invest in as well.
Right.
So there were ways for us we were able to come up with that within our own resources, but not necessarily equally, you know, but then people got their stuff back.
Right.
You know, when they moved
The
in.
Mountain View just finished a project earlier this year, a 19-unit project, and one couple actually put the land under contract, and then they pulled together, I guess, about $3 million out of membership initially, but since they put out the biggest chunk, they got a return on their money at the end of the day, you know, and it's all transparent, you know, nobody's hiding anything or trying to do anything about it. But there's a lot of money needed, you know, you got to get the land under contract even before even before you do that, you actually need to spend some money to do what's called due diligence. And Janie just got here. Yay, Janie made it. And actually she's, I'm like, get the building built, you know, and do the budgets and all that, and she's more the entitlement of that upfront due diligence, but you typically need an architect, soils engineer, I don't know who else you might need to really assess, do you even want to buy that piece of property, right? And then you get it under contract. There's typically a contingency phase where you do like a gazillion studies, as much as you possibly can learn about the property to figure out whether it's safe to buy or not, you know, before you actually put your earnest money down.
And that sounds like it's the same as a subdivision that you would.
Well, I mean, it's just a smart way to buy property. Is you want to do an initial soils report to make sure you don't have dirty dirt, and if you do have dirty dirt, what are you going to do about the dirty dirt? Just so you really understand what you're getting into. So this is just a walkable neighborhood. Like I said, we're really focused on that. And community space. So this is Oakland. This is my Oakland project. So we're on the estuary. There's the pier and the dock. And this promenade connects with, goes all the way, the Park Street Bridge, whoever knows Oakland, is like literally right here.
Oh, okay.
And then there's the, High Street Bridge is next. So there's a promenade, goes all the way down. It's all part of the Bay Trail. And so that's who we had to deal with, that state agency, BCDC, about all that. And so here's our kitchen and dining room, which goes to an outdoor patio, which is right on the promenade, the lounge, the multi-purpose room. They haven't decided yet what they're going to do with it, but they bought a bunch of chairs and they'll figure it out. The neighborhood it's in is called Jingletown, which is this lovely artist community, and their intention is to really be open to the community. The community was thrilled about the project coming, and so I can see them totally open to like artists having an art opening here or doing events here for sure. That space up there where all the plants are, that's where they're putting the pool. And there's the gym. Down here they decided to make above the laundry, that's going to be a library. They have an office where they're going to put, they've decided people will put their computers down there so people can, you know, do stuff down there, and whoever's going to be in charge of like the bookkeeping and the record keeping and all that, that'll be all in the office. A very interesting thing is all the units got plumbed with plumbing for a stacker washer dryer, but not one person has chosen to do it. They're all choosing to come down and use the community laundry room, which I think is great. You know, everybody's very excited. I have to say, it's really been lovely to see them come together, and that they're very excited about being in community.
What's the acreage of this one?
55 to 75. I mean,
No,
it just turned out that way.
Acreage.
Oh, acreage. Oh, I heard age.
Sorry.
What's an acre? So it's 40. So we're just shy over an acre.
So these are like,
It's 44.
Seriously?
Is that right?
And how many What's the?
I'm thinking that it's 44,000 square feet.
It's right over an acre.
Then it's right over an acre.
And you had
It's not a big
19 units.
size.
No, this is 41 units. The 19 unit one is down in Mountain View.
Wait a minute,
So-
41 units and it's a little over an acre?
Right.
So these are like
It goes
apartments.
up.
Oh, gotcha.
Multi-story.
It's multi-story, goes up.
There, they do that.
Well, it's just one of the challenges. Go ahead.
I'm still confused about the units. Are these single-family dwellings, or are they stackable condos, or apartments?
This happens to be apartments.
Okay.
It all kind of depends. Like Frog Song is like townhouses, you know, 3 clustered, 4 clustered.
Single level?
No, most of ours are 2-story.
And Sebastopol.
We have some that are 1-story.
Is more semi-connected.
Yeah, 2 Acre Wood is semi-connected,
Yeah.
also more townhousey, up and down.
Right.
We're planning 1 level.
But these
So
are-
each unit is one level, they're stacked one on top of another,
So it's like
but each unit is its own condominium unit, basically.
So it's a fully functional home.
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
yeah.
It
You
just
have your own
Yeah.
kitchen and your own bathroom and all of
Yeah.
that stuff.
And
Yeah.
how large are they?
It ranges. This project, the smallest is 700 square feet, and I think our largest is 1250. But, you know, it's smaller footprint, you know, so, and again, like in here, you've got that 6,000 square feet of community space. So the idea is that, you know, your individual home is smaller and almost on purpose to get you out to go into the community. You know, you're not
But
doing
there are
it.
communities in states that have more cheaper
Right.
space that are big single-family houses.
Yeah.
So it can be done anyway. but
Yeah, it's whatever,
here,
you know, like,
financially
if we
it's-
found 5 acres and people said, you know, we only want, you know, we wanna do 1 level, but if people said we wanna be like really spread out, and people are willing to pay for that, you know, each time you don't build to, you know, touching, it costs you more money. So, you know, that could go that way, but, you know, we're looking at density, you know, which is, you know, sort of the bad word in the sustainability language, but it's really the more sustainable way to build.
Each person owns their units.
Yes,
And a portion, a percentage of the community?
yes,
The communities.
yes,
So the community, the whole community service space is owned by multiple people, by the entire.
It's for everyone,
yes, yes.
It's for everyone.
The burden, the
Each
cost,
portion of it.
yes.
It's really not that unlike a homeowners association
Yeah.
or a condominium development where you have your own unit and
Maybe
you
you have a
also have
Pool.
pool, clubhouse. I mean, it's not that, it's about
Yeah.
along the same lines of that. It's not anything that's
Excuse me?
unique to co-housing per se.
Similar to like a Del Webb type community housing? You know what the Del
I don't
Webbs
know
are?
what I have no idea what
They're
their
on the
structure
phone, yeah.
is.
What
Yeah.
I've heard you say several times very clearly, and I understand it's confusing, is that it's just like any other real estate project, of which there's incredible diversity.
Mhm.
But it's, the distinguishing characteristic is the social commitment.
Yes,
To focus
yes.
on commonweal.
Yes,
I have a friend
yes.
who lives in Cohousing up Bainbridge Island,
Oh,
where
yeah.
when they started it, it was much bigger. Everyone has an individual bungalow.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of green space, and better than they have common
Right.
extra kitchen. But the beauty of it is it can be any kind of physical plan.
Right, right. It's the physicality, the few, there are a few important physical components that you want. You want front doors facing each other. You want to design it so it creates interaction. You want the parking somewhere else, not at the front of the property. You want common space, you know, you want to create space for community to happen in. But past that, you know, it's a building, you know, and it's the community and the social contract that everybody's making that makes it co-housing and makes it be a community. You know, but you want the physical to support that.
Is this a plan for Rohnert Park?
Excuse
Is
me?
there a plan for Rohnert Park?
Is there a plan for Rohnert Park? We're working on it.
Regular Packer area over there in the San Antonio area?
That's a very interesting site. It seems like that would be a perfect place to.
Because that was supposed to be Sonoma Mountain Village.
And it still is Sonoma Mountain
It
Village.
still is Sonoma Mountain
It
Village.
certainly is.
In fact, the Zen Center was trying to.
We were just talking about that.
I'd love to hear whatever you have to say about it when it's appropriate.
Can I just add one other thing about
Yeah.
kind of, we're talking about how it compares to other types of development, and just one other point, and that is, while co-housing, so I'm a planner, I think, you might have,
Mhm.
Linda might have told you that, so city planning is kind of my deal, and understanding housing elements and zoning ordinances, that's my world, like, for better or for worse, that's what it is. And from the standpoint of, if, you know, looking at zoning, is there a site that's appropriate? It would be similar to looking for a place for a 20 to 30 unit condominium development. So, you know, those are often allowed in a variety of different zoning districts. It's not something that's a huge departure from that type. So, I mean, it's unique in the more social aspect, as you very appropriately pointed out, from the standpoint of getting entitlements and development. I think it has a lot more to offer back to the community, and just to be more self-sustaining in so many different ways. But the good news is that it's not some rare bird that's gonna really cause a lot of trouble, any more trouble than any ordinary development would.
Okay. So picture of vibrant community living. Actually, I should have post the shades. So amenity-rich lifestyle. So we talked about community kitchen, large dining room, multi-purpose space, gardens. To the extent now, Oakland is an urban infill space. So the first level, so that, you know, there's ground floor common space and a garage, and then above that, we've built in planters. You know, the city requires some level of landscaping anyway, but we've also planned in planters, and, you know, to the extent that you can garden in an urban environment, in a very tight urban, you know, place. But Frog Song has a beautiful community garden. Mountain View, they chose to have fewer units and not max out the site, so they could have gardening areas. So that's why it's only one of the reasons why it's only 19 units, because they wanted to, and they chose to spend an additional $600,000 to do underground parking. Right, so again, to free up property for gardens and landscaping. But, you know, that's a big ticket to decide, you know, but that's what they decided to do. Your private home, to your point, you have a full functioning, if you never left, you'd be fine. Fully cooked kitchen and dining, universal design. So again, this is for aging in place, and that's one reason why we don't want to do two-level units. And want to design that way, so, you know, years down the road, all of a sudden you don't have to remodel your bathroom to accommodate you. You know, God forbid anybody's in a wheelchair, but, you know, wider hallways, wider doorways, so like you're done. You don't have to think about it. And, you know, if wanted, emergency call and security systems, you know, again, thinking down the road, because this is intended to age in place. So who lives in co-housing? Who does this appeal to? You know, people who want to age gracefully in a supportive environment, people who really want social interaction and community life, people who want to actively participate in their community and how it functions, people who want to take responsibility for themselves and their legacy, and who want to live more gently on the earth. You know, if you want to stay in your 4,000 square foot home, you know, this is probably not for you. Interestingly, Mountain View, while it's only 19 units, we went and toured it recently. There are some units that are large, you know. Mountain View's on the peninsula. And I think that had to do again with the price point, where it you know, the math of it was, okay, the land costs this much, it costs this much to build, so each unit's gonna have to be X. Oh, for that much money, we have to give people, you know, square footage. So there was one, the 3-bedroom, that was at least over 2,000 square feet. That's not really our intention. Our intention is
times as big as
yeah, our intention is to keep it small. And then what does it take? Well, like we talked about, you know, committed group of people who really want to make it happen. Financial feasibility, which that's like two-sided. That's like finding a site and doing the math. This is where we come in. And like, you know, does it make sense? Like we studied a site in Fairfax that is just perfect. It pains me every time I drive by it, and, you know, it's not happening because the math just didn't work between the parking requirement and the city saying do not even think about more than 3 stories. There was just no way in the world to make the math of it work, right?
I'm curious where in Fairfax it is.
You know, where, not the original Good Earth, but the Good Earth before it moved. No, not on Bolinas, no, that's the old one, right at the corner.
Yes.
Right there.
Okay.
That was
All
for
the
sale.
gas stations.
And the gas station.
Wow.
That corner would be
Right.
like perfect.
Right, but you couldn't go higher than 3 stories.
They were like, don't even think about
So
it.
that's an interesting thing. It was one of those situations where the parking, I think we could have probably worked with them on and kind of, you know, shook them and said, hey, we don't need that much parking, and we don't want that much parking. But the height is always a sensitive issue, especially in a downtown area. Sometimes they want us to keep it a certain scale, which I can certainly appreciate as a planner. I don't think 3 stories would have made any problem on that whatsoever with the right design. But it seemed like a non-starter in that
Yeah,
case.
they were just
so
like,
you kind of have to
don't
do your
even-
homework and know what the even if it's not in the code, what there's an aversion to, and understand what you might be up against or what the neighborhood might be thinking about. So
Yeah,
we
so
do
that
all
was
that
really
stuff.
sad. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you ever have an affordable housing component that you could go after grants or something for your upfront?
Well, there's affordable housing requirements in different municipalities where a certain percentage have to be
Which you would do.
inclusionary housing, which we would do. There's not a lot of affordable housing dollars out there. The other, I won't call it a problem, but complication is the way the affordable housing rules, HUD rules, whoever rules that universe is, you can't choose you don't get chosen by being a good co-houser. You get chosen because your financials say you qualify for this housing. So there's a project up in Sebastopol that was developed by Affordable Housing Associates. That's a rental. Huh?
I consulted on that one.
And you consulted on that one, and everyone was selected based on their economic, you know,
Well, I wasn't thinking about the entire project. I was only thinking about like 10%.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think, if I'm understanding your question, I think as Linda said, there are affordable housing requirements that do vary from city to city and county. I think it would be great to make it as affordable as possible, but that's all relative, and there's obviously a cost, you know, it might not be affordable to everybody, but I like the idea of exploring partnerships where we could, you know, get grants and make it more affordable, and I also think land trusts are an interesting concept that I know Sonoma, you know, has done stuff in the past with Sonoma Land Trust, and, you know, there are some very creative models out there, but it's, you know, just something that I think depends on the site and you know, what's available at the time.
okay, what else do we need? Expertise. Well, that's lieu of professionals I talked about, and us. And then resources, time, effort, and money. The couple who kicked off the Mountain View project, they actually came and did a presentation at another meeting, and they figured out that they actually did the project manager job also. They were a very unique couple. I don't think most people would take on
They
what
were
they took
amazing.
on. Yeah, they
They
took
were
on what,
nothing
you know,
short of
most people would not
incredible.
take on, but they figured that they had about 20,000 hours into the project to make it happen. You know, I don't know that you see that in every single project, but you know, you get what's the term, the burning souls, you know, people who like really want to make it happen. So, and then there's people who say, you know, I don't have that time, but here's my money, which is just as valuable. And then patience, perseverance, and courage. Like I said, you know, if you're there at the very beginning, you've got this whole approval process, which, you know, generally, a year to 2 years sometimes. Ours was about 2.5 years to get all our approvals before we ever went near putting a shovel in the ground, right? So you really have to have patience for that. And then political will, you know, because depending on where the site is and what the environment is, a lot of politicking sometimes. We had a lot of politicking to do in Oakland around being on the water. The planning commission, that was simple, but being on the water.
And it
took a
wasn't
lot of-
really anything about co-housing per se.
Oh,
It was just
no,
about
not at
the
all.
fact
It was
that
just-
development
right,
in general.
right, yeah.
So
Yeah. So,
And
frustrating.
have you ever found projects where it's an existing building of some kind
Yeah.
Yes.
that just needs some conversions?
would
and-
love to
Yes.
find something to do that
Yeah.
too. Have
Children's
not
Village
found
is
it
going-
yet.
The Children's Village is going under, in
I'm thinking
Sonoma on Highway 12. And,
Where? What?
they've got a
Children's
park.
Village?
Yeah.
It was for kids in foster care to have like family living, and they're closing it, but I don't know exactly who owns it or if they would sell it, but so it's.
Huh.
Sometimes you just
I
have to look
mean,
into
we
it.
had looked at a site, up in
Ukiah.
Ukiah that had been an old, residential school for boys. That was up for sale on 5 acres, and it was a really good deal, and actually Janie went up and met with the planning director, but, a Buddhist school wound up buying it before we ever got, but, you know, would love to find something to repurpose, perhaps a school, a hotel, an apartment building, you know, we're totally open.
Santa Rosa has the the old hospital, that whole site, and they're doing public hearings right now to see what they want to do with it. They had to move the hospital and all those things out of there because of earthquake requirements that could not be met at that
Which
site.
hospital?
Old Santa Rosa Community Hospital.
Yeah.
Is that different than Memorial?
Yes,
Different than
it is
Memorial?
different, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be interesting.
But I mean, it's just, it's a big site. There are some obviously there are some drawbacks.
The one thing I would mention too is that on the repurposing of existing buildings is a great idea. It has to make sense financially, which,
right.
because of the requirements for residential, it can be tough in California because of the earthquake. And then the other thing is existing apartments, if they're already occupied, displacing existing affordable housing is generally not the way to start. But sometimes if they know they're going to sell, you know, it might be a really attractive alternative compared to turning it into big single family homes. So, I mean, those are the types of opportunities that we look for to think of, you know, this is a perfect fit. This is a better alternative than what you might be getting, you know, from some other applicant or developer or homeowner.
Yeah, I mean, the main criteria is we would like to have at least an acre so you can get density on it, you know, to again make it financially viable, walkable or near public transportation, or again, not where you have to get in your car, you know, to at least get the container of milk or whatever. And larger is fine, because again, you know, it would be really great to do age restricted and a family side by side. You know, we've got a bigger picture than that for Sonoma Mountain Village that we're going to propose. So that's in the works. Go ahead.
What about property taxes? How is it going to be handled in Oakland? I mean, every unit.
Send it as a condominium. Again, the legality of it is just like owning other real estate, owning a condo. It's no
So each
different.
person pays their own.
Yeah,
Each
but what
person
about
pays their own.
The common area.
That ends up being included in part of what you individually own, as
It's
part of the
a portion
value of
based
your
on your
home.
square footage.
Right.
Okay.
Right, yeah. So, again, the legality of it doesn't look all that much different from, from a condo real estate transaction.
And you're still having to pay attention to zoning like, please correct me if I'm mistaken, I've heard in Sebastopol, you can't put septic on anything less than an acre and a half.
That sounds about right.
Is that right? And so if there hypothetically was an acre and a half that had a single family unit on it that wanted to convert it all to co-housing, does it need special zoning to do that, or?
It depends. It just,
Yeah.
you know, the main thing is if there's a property, we can figure out very quickly what the zoning is, and then that's where I go through and start combing through and seeing, you know, if it's a pretty neat zoning ordinance, it's not that hard, but if it's like some where you have to look in 5 different sections to figure out what you can really do.
If it's an ad, it's an ad.
If it's ag, yeah, I'd have to look.
You
I
have
mean,
to
there's
look. Okay,
permitted
gotcha.
uses and then
Gotcha.
conditionally permitted
Yeah.
uses.
Right.
and
Yeah,
Density
they're-
requirements.
Density, yeah.
and
Right.
stuff.
Like,
Gotcha.
you have to kind of go through
Okay.
the whole list,
thank you.
but, yeah.
Thank you.
We're open. Sometimes it'll be.
At what point do you come in on project? Doesn't there have to be a group of people
Well,
first?
let me just throw that out there, because we're talking right now about sites. If there's a site that looks promising, or if there's a site that somebody thinks might be worth, you know, looking at, I can usually do a pretty quick assessment. I mean, that's kind of, you know, I want to say quick and dirty. Does it look like we should look into it further, or does it just look like, no, the zoning wouldn't allow it? It seems
Yeah,
like
right.
it's just
We've
like
rejected lots of
like
sites already.
bottom of the list, not top of the list kind of site. You know, I'm willing to look at that fairly quickly to see if there's a there there, just, you know, on my own dime.
And then we actually have an architect who's working with us also. So we get to, you know, in pretty short order, you know, once it passes the zoning sniff test, then we'll do like a density study and figure out what can get on there, and then I do the math of it,
Right.
because I'm the math person, the budget person, and like, okay, does it look like there's a there? So like that's what we did with Fairfax, you know, it's like, I met with the broker, figured out how much they wanted, you know, went through the zoning, they wanted mixed use, which was great, fine, no problem, but, you know, with what we could get on the site, the math of it just could not work any which way from Sunday, so that was a little
I
frustrating.
mean, the real challenge and the real milestone is to get property under contract so that, and negotiate a time that you have adequate time to do due diligence to make sure that you know what you might be getting into.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's really important, like it would be for any type of, you know, real
So
estate.
we've got concurrent, you know, we're doing a lot of meetings like this. We're also meeting with potential developers to, you know, get people interested who would be able to get like property, you know, because we don't have like giant pockets here, you know, but to help with some of that upfront money, you know, and groups. And I would love to find someone else like my client in Oakland who like totally gets it and has resources, may or may not be a developer. They don't really need to be a developer, but it's like, yeah, I want to make this happen. So those are all the streams that we're working on and looking for sites.
Couple questions. Have you ever looked at, you're saying you work with architecture, alternatives like reuse, like there's freight,
Shipping containers.
yeah, shipping containers, and there's different things, there's even old rail cars, or a variety of different things that can be changed, modified. Does that affect the cost? And what's the smallest project you've ever worked on? How many, like 7 units or 19?
For cohousing specifically, cohousing?
I haven't worked on anything really small.
Yeah.
No, I mean the smallest one I know of, I think, is Temescal in Oakland, 9, which
Nine
is
or eight.
9.
Yeah, can I say
Yeah.
something about size?
Yeah,
of
please
unit?
do,
So,
yeah.
I've worked, I work on the process stuff, like with consensus and communication skills and all of that. And so I worked with probably about 24 different communities. There's sort of a sweet spot in sort of how many residents works. If you're too big, you don't really get that intimacy of getting to know people. If you're too small, if 1 or 2 people are out for some reason because they're sick or they're, you know, have some other thing going, you feel that lots more. So the sweet spot is somewhere in the like 20 to 30 range of units.
And you might
You
have
know.
more people, obviously. if more
Right.
people.
Right.
But somewhere in that where it's big enough that you can, the group can hold it when somebody's out of commission.
I think it's
And you've
also
got a
just that
diversity.
You feel like you find your few people that you might be a little bit closer to, but you still kind of recognize everybody by, you know.
Right, you might not be best friends with all 20 people, but you find your tribe within
Yeah.
that community, right? Whereas if it's only, you know, eight units,
Yeah.
like, I guess I gotta like everybody, you know, kind of thing.
What's the name of the one in Oakland that's really small?
Hmm?
What's the name?
Temescal Commons, and I think they're like 8 or 9
I think
or
it's
something like
9,
that.
because I
They-
met
they-
Jim and
yeah.
toured it, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
they
9.
bought a couple of like
Yeah.
duplexes all near
Yeah,
each
there
other.
was a
and did
4-unit
retrofit.
building, and then like there were a couple nearby, and then I think they threw one up.
They did some
and-
really cool things, and you know, on the subject of the railroad cars and everything. I mean, those are really lovely, creative ideas. I don't know that they've ever been tried for co-housing.
I mean,
I think
I
there might
have
be some
I have a
challenges,
list
but-
of that kind of information as well as prefab. As, you know, looking at other ways to bring costs down. Something like a train car is difficult because it will not accommodate universal design. So by the time you take the shell and you gut it and you put something else back in it, you're probably not saving like anything.
And I
right?
think the key is the size of if you have a lot of acreage, those things work much
Right,
better.
right.
If it's a small acreage, you're gonna have little tiny houses right next to each other, and I'm not sure that's what we're.
But again, we're open to exploring.
Yeah.
Was the place open in something Commons?
Temescal.
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 Yeah.
I'm 100% sure they have no openings at the moment.
That's okay,
The-
just
the-
wanted to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we currently have 2 co-housing units locally?
Mm-hmm.
I heard-
Oh, in Sonoma County, there's
There's
1, 2,
Three
3,
or
4,
four.
depending on how you define it, there's 4 or 6.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, there's
there's
Frog Song,
Frog
there's
Song,
Two Acre Wood.
2 Acre
Name
Wood.
Frog Song?
Frog Song is in Cotati, 2 Acre Wood in Sebastopol,
Is that the one by
Sequoia
the park?
Village in Sebastopol.
Is that one by the park, by Regal?
Yes. And then there's
Sequoia
Yalupa in
Sequoia
Santa
Village,
Rosa.
right, Yalupa.
There was one that was burned out, fire, it's very quiet.
Are you thinking of Monon's Reel?
Oh.
Oh.
But it's an effective cohousing.
Is the, one in Regal, what's the name of it again?
2 Acre
2 Acre
Wood.
Wood.
Is that age restricted?
No.
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 There's very
None of the
few.
ones in the county
Yeah,
are.
there's very few. The whole age-restricted idea is a little new. So there's Silver Sage in Colorado that's age-restricted. My project's age-restricted.
Not me.
Grass Valley, Wolf Creek Lodge, that's age-restricted. And Mountain View is
And you
age-restricted.
mentioned Spring Valley? I heard Spring Valley.
That's not co-housing.
Oh,
No.
Yeah, someone was asking, could co-housing be there? And co-housing could absolutely be there. You know, it wouldn't be very difficult, but again, you'd have to insert that culture into an otherwise not co-housing culture.
So ironically or synchronistically or something, we were living in the Grass Valley area when that co-housing was going up. And it seemed as if they were, I want to say, selling units and inviting people in. So it wasn't as if there was a cohesive group ahead of time that said, okay, let's do this. It's, I guess.
Well, so the way that project came about was Chuck Durrett and Katie McCammett, their husband-wife, they got the property under contract.
Okay.
And then they put the word out and started inviting people. And actually, when I took my training in 07, took the workshop with Chuck in 07, they were under design then, and actually I think 2 people, you know, actually sat and participated in our workshop and contributed, and they were in the phase of like designing their units or something like that, but that's
There's
how they
probably
went
a
about
small
it.
group, but not a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
group.
yeah.
Okay.
But there are
Because
groups that have started with
Start-
a group
right.
of people saying, I want to do this, and then
Right.
bring in the people who know how to do the building part so that you can do the building, the people
Of the
part.
community part,
Right.
right. Like, even though my client got the building going and the process going without the community at this point in time has been meeting for 3 years. Just getting, you know, hanging out together, getting to know each other. The community does the majority of the marketing relative to getting more people to come and, you know, then forming their different committees. So they were meeting like initially I would say once a month, then it went to every 2 weeks, and now it's weekly. You know, and then I interact with them as it relates to the realities of the project.
Do you have business cards that you're gonna give out?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to run to my car. I think I gave a bunch of mine out already, but yeah.
I have just a general question.
Sure.
When units open up, become available, either yours or one's festival, are they, is the occupancy rate generally quite high and the units are snapped up when they become available, or? how
I'd say
is
most
that?
communities have waiting lists.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a national co-housing website that's like a clearinghouse. So they'll have information on all the communities in the country, and then people typically list there when there's units for sale.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are interested go visit, and like, you know, in those extra units I talked about, you can stay, or somebody might open up their place to you so you can stay a weekend and get, you know, the flavor of it.
Yeah, because you're buying into not just the unit, but.
That's
the
right,
so you need to
exactly.
know, who are these
Yeah.
people?
Exactly. Well, that's why, like this, my Oakland community, they kind of know what they're about at this point, because now granted, if you're the last buyer, you have a little bit of catch up to do, but you know, that's just how it goes. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you? So to learn more, we actually are planning a tour to Frog Song, haven't planned it yet, and 2 Acre Wood. So we're gonna plan a tour with, like, you know, lunch in between or something like that. So that's why we want everybody sign in information so we can let you know about that. We're also planning what we're calling a nuts and bolts of co-housing, which is like the nuts and bolts, like how do you, we've sort of touched on it, but like what does it really take? And then we would recommend reading the Senior Co-Housing Handbook that's out there. And that's our contact info, but we can get cards. We have to run to my car and get some more cards. And I think.
Or you can get out your phones. I
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. I do that now. I never thought I would do that, but it's so easy to get on there.
And any other questions? Any other questions that we haven't touched on that people?
So the other way it's different from like Fountain Grove and Vanessa up in Fountain Grove. It's not a retirement community, co-housing, even though.
Well, I mean, it's, the idea of it is that, you know, whether you're retired or not is sort of neither here nor there. It's that you're aging in place with, you know, this group of people. You know, granted, you might have circumstances that make you move away or whatever. So you can kind of think of it as a retirement community if you wanted to, but, you know, I wouldn't necessarily, it's another option for aging. Like I said, that, you know, this is not for everyone as much as we think it's fabulous. You know, again, we've had people come to meetings that once they understand they have to participate, like, no, thank you, you know.
My goal is to be in co-housing before I retire.
Right.
Still work a few years. I might work forever, who knows? Having so much fun. But, you know, eventually
Right.
probably work less and play more. And
Right, I mean, we wanted to put a project at the Diamond Lumberyard site in Sebastopol, right there, perfect site. Lumberyard.
Oh, yeah.
Sebastopol tractor.
that's nice. That's
So that's in escrow already, but we're gonna be talking to those folks because they're thinking of building housing. It's not a housing project, but they're thinking of building housing into it, so I wanna talk to them to see if we can, because that would be kind of cool to have a co-housing project kind of within a hospitality environment, because you'd have kind of all the common space sort of there already.
We could share the
you know?
amenities, that's what I think.
Sharing
'Cause a lot of
amenities,
resorts
exactly.
in Napa do that with local residents. If they have a gym or a pool, you know, they'll actually allow you to have a local membership.
Yeah,
which I think
so
is a
I was
really lovely
thinking, you know,
concept.
so anyway, I'm trying to get, a meeting with them.
What are they gonna use the property for?
Probably a hotel.
That's what they're going for.
There was just a big community meeting a month ago where the developer, it's the same developer that did the Healdsburg Hotel in H2, and they're gonna now be building H3. And, you know, it's a really small developer, it's like 3 people. And their architect had a big community meeting to present what their ideas were, all super conceptual, but essentially a hotel. And wanting a lot of feedback from the community. And I think it was a pretty productive meeting. So they mentioned that they were thinking of including up to 18 micro apartments. So of course, you know, ding, 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 co-housing, co-housing. You know, so we're in communication to hopefully have a meeting and, you know, see if there's something to talk about.
I'm curious what is happening with Snowy Mountain, because I know Zen Center was thinking they would put.
Well, they're actively looking now, I think, to start to get something actually
Right.
going on that site. So
Right.
I'm not really able to talk
I
a lot
see.
about it right now.
Okay.
But we are pursuing it, I can just say that.
Right, we had a meeting, I would call a positive meeting with them.
With the Zen Center people?
No, with the
with the-
development
with
director at
Sonoma.
Sonoma Mountain, yeah,
Is that
and,
Cotting?
excuse
Is
me?
that Cotting Junior?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it's-
Cotting
Cotting-
Enterprises is the entity that owns it, but we didn't meet with Cotting, we met with whoever the development director is. And he totally responsive, receptive,
very interested.
and, you
See,
know,
that's-
sent us drawings so we could work on what we wanna propose, and so we're just in process with what we wanna propose. And then to go, see if we can make a deal.
And that is exciting because
That's
there is
really
some acreage
exciting.
to play with.
But that's not a place where you can go out and walk to get a quart of milk somewhere.
Not right now, but I bet you pretty soon. There's another development, Brookdale or,
Well,
yeah.
there's a lot planned for that area.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be there on day one though, so,
Yeah.
you know.
well,
depends
we're
on
not
where
gonna,
it all fits in.
if tomorrow they said yes and we struck a deal, we wouldn't be opening our doors for 3 years. So in 3 years, a whole
It
lot
might
is,
be- It might be a little thinner on that one.
well, that's just because all the entitlements
Yeah,
are done, which
yeah.
what makes that so
Yeah.
appealing
It'll
is
be so
they've got,
painful.
yeah, so it could be 2 and a half before the doors open anyway, and that much. And they're taking proposals from people. They're ready to start developing
Yeah,
again.
they wanna get something going. I mean, you
Yeah.
start this when the economy starts getting better, everybody starts, you know, being able to get their
Yeah, and
financing.
there's another big project that is started, Brookdale, what's the name of it?
No, I can't remember.
I
right
can't
now.
remember, you know, so
Sorry.
somebody's thinking people are moving to Rohnert Park.
University District.
Yeah, University District, right. Yeah,
Are there residency requirements, like, if I'm not able to get something, or some hope for something in the next year, I'll have to move out of state, which I don't wanna do, but
Mhm.
then I'd like to come back, so if I'm.
There's no residency requirements, no, we've got people in Oakland coming from other states, I don't know where, but moving here. They'll participate in the meetings via Skype, you know, so they can be part of the meetings. And, you know, they're moving here because the grandkids are here, or the daughter's here, or the husband just died.
Yeah,
or
residency
whatever. You
requirements.
can come wherever.
They do come into play if you're applying for any kind of affordable unit sometimes, that they will require that you establish residency, but as far as co-housing in
Yeah,
general goes,
no.
no, there wouldn't be anything.
No, and that's why that National's website is really nice, because that's how a lot of people stay connected to what's happening in other parts of the country.
Yeah. Sounds like a good one. So when you're getting started, right? This is, you know, the 5 years it took us to get Frog Song built was extremely all-consuming. But then once you've moved in and gotten started, it's like childbirth. You kind of forget the pain of some of
No,
that.
don't be telling them that.
then it's you're not making it. You're having it. You're being in it. And we've now been living there more than twice as long as it took us to get it going. But for me, at least, it's not. If I were for some reason to have to move somewhere else, I would only move into another co-housing community. I never want to live in a single, alone house. Again, now, is it utopia? Do we not get in each other's, stuff once in a while? Of course we do, but the benefits of it have so outweighed, any of the work it took to make it happen.
And then other than use of common space, that's obvious, are there any other differences between multi-generation and old 55 or over?
Well, the only difference is that I would say the biggest difference would be, again, you're making decisions not around children.
Right.
That's
okay.
probably the biggest, and then
Yeah.
again, any
schedule
legal.
and things like that, like when
Yeah.
you want to, all those.
Yeah, whatever fault, whatever fault. That's
The obvious.
and
Well,
then
but the universal design is not always a feature
Yeah.
of intergenerational. So Linda probably went over in her presentation, universal design being interiors.
like no
are-
thresholds, wide doorways, wide,
Are
so you
adaptable,
never,
so
so
that
God
if you
forbid, you're in a wheelchair, or
I see.
just, you never
So
have
that
to
would be a
remodel
big-
to accommodate
interesting.
something, And that, again, like Janie said, you might not necessarily, you can design anything by universal design
Well,
standards, but you might not choose to.
And frankly, the type of unit, we are looking for all of the units to be all on one level versus being a townhouse where you would have stairs inside the unit. So there are design features
Yeah.
that would be definitely a factor for 55 and over that
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily be. So.
Thank you.
Okay, cost.
So,
Let's talk now back to reality. Like, to move
Nah.
into one of these costs what?
So the simple answer is market rate housing. So specifically, I can talk about Oakland. So the least expensive unit in Oakland is, I think, $415 for 700 square feet, a 700 square foot unit. And the most expensive unit, which is like, I would almost call it a penthouse. It's like up, it's got really high ceilings. I could probably pull up pictures. And it's 2 bedrooms, and I'm gonna say it's like $740.
So it's like condominium.
It's just like-
Additional dues, what are those additional dues?
Well, the dues are way less. The dues are way less, like $250, something like that, And you're again, the community's deciding what they want those dues to pay for. If somewhere along the way they said we want a property manager, and we're already, we're happy to kick in the extra $50 a month or whatever, then it can go up. But the community's in control of that.
Because some of the costs that go into a typical homeowners association are really kind of offset with co-housing, and or either that or they're built into the cost more. So the HOH is like
So local.
Yeah.
So when we moved into ours in downtown Cotati in 2003, I'm in a 900 square foot unit, and what I paid for it was exactly what I sold my 900 square foot unit in the L section for. So it was this, same.
What was that?
That was $235
In 2003.
in 2003. The resale values, I would say, are proportionately higher because people want to. There are people who are willing to pay a premium to live in co-housing,
Right.
so they're willing to
Maybe
pay
about the same
more
cost as Oakland is what you're really saying.
than.
Probably for, similar,
So I would say, look at the local market. In Sonoma, in this area, what would you buy a 2-bedroom condominium for?
That's new.
That's new.
That's, you know, if it's 20 years old, you're not, you know, there's like really no true comp to a co-housing.
Someone we recently mentioned fronts on cost, I think you're around 400 something to move in over there.
For what? For buying a unit? Well, okay, we have a variety of sizes, and again, once you're built and you've bought it based on whatever it costs to build it, then it's like what the market will bear, right? I mean, people, the unit that was just for sale was in the low 400, like 420s, I think.
And that was a 900 square foot?
No, it was it was a bigger unit, but I'm not remembering exactly what that unit was going for. But yeah, it's not cheaper to buy co-housing.
Right.
It ends up being cheaper to live in co-housing because of all this shared stuff. So if I'm going camping, I don't have to go buy a tent. I put out an email, anybody have a tent tomorrow, and I come home from work and there's 5 of them on my porch. You know, I don't have to go spend money to go socialize because all my friends are right there, right outside the door.
And I would say as you get older, that savings
It's even
daily
greater.
stuff is probably going to be a great.
What is your monthly?
The HOA dues,
Yeah.
they vary from the size of the unit. They go from about $250 to about $350 a month.
That's really low.
But
World
we
of
own a
HOA.
commercial. We also own a
Right.
retail building. So where Sal's Pizza.
Oh, yeah.
That building's part of our project, and
Get income.
so we get income from that business
And pizza.
and pizza.
And some of the
smell
sites we've
pizza.
looked at, you know,
Yeah.
want mixed use, you know, which we think would be again a
Some of
great
the more
benefit.
downtown sites require some type of retail on the bottom, but allow residential on top. For example, Nevada, we
Yeah.
looked at sites in downtown Nevada that could work really well for a little bit, I don't want to say urban, but more of a downtown, more appropriate for seniors, frankly, than families, because you're not going to have a lot of yards. You're going to
Right.
need more of a small unit, maybe a park or something.
We're also thinking, like, we've had, I don't know how many meetings we've had, and I'm gonna say 99% of the people who show up are women. And so I thought we've had, you know, rather than doing a studio, 1 bedroom, a few 2 bedrooms, to do primarily like 2 master suite units, so women can share. I mean, I remember where my mom was living in assisted living, you looked in the dining room and it was, again, 85% single women. And I know she would have been a whole lot happier if she had had a roommate to sit and watch TV with. And I know a lot of us don't want to think, you know, that far in advance, but it's what's happening, you know, it's what's happening. So we're just exploring all kinds of different models, you know, to make different opportunities happen.
There's one more question.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Pardon my ignorance, prior to coming here, I had no clue what co-housing was.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was sharing house with somebody else.
Uh-huh.
Or perhaps we did a community, I have no idea. So I'm just now learning
Great.
what you're all talking about.
Great.
But the reason you're conducting these meetings is,
To get people educated and interested.
so are you looking for people to be in on the ground floor to help finance the project?
For sure.
Are you looking for future residents?
All of the above.
All of the above?
I think
All
we're
of the
also,
above.
now that you know what it is, if you hear anybody talking about it, because frankly, there are misconceptions. What Linda just described about 2 people living in a 2-suite unit, that's home sharing or shared housing, if you want to get, you know, technical about
Right.
terms. And it's often, most, I would say 99% of the people don't know the difference or think one of the other. So you're
Right.
not alone in that.
Okay.
Right.
So are you looking for investors perhaps?
Yes, we are. I mean,
All
that's
of the
one of our streams of work as well. It's all of the above.
And advocates, I mean, basically, if there are people that, I know people in Rohnert Park, I'm not sure how many of you actually live here, but I know that you have a commission, a senior commission or an advisory committee. You know, and those people can be really helpful too in terms of
Did you attend
spreading the
town
word.
hall meeting?
I did not, no, I was not able
That was
to.
just sweet.
Yeah, I knew of it, but I wasn't able to attend.
So as an investor,
Yeah.
if I were to invest in this project, but not actually live there,
But you do or do not?
invest in the project, the overall project, be there on the ground floor, but not actually reside in this community, do I receive some type of salary, or, I mean, a salary, but income, return on my money?
Well, if it's an investment, sure, there would be.
What's the question?
If she was asking if she was an investor and wanted to live in the community, or did not want to live in the community,
Yes,
would
so
there be a
Mountain View,
return on
yes,
investment?
so Mountain View actually set up 2 LLCs. One that was the Investor LLC, which wound up being a couple who moved in, but also some, I think 1 or 2 other people that that were not gonna live there. And then there was the Membership LLC. And the investors definitely got a return on their investment. And that gets built into the budget of the project.
So that's another way that's like any other real estate project.
Exactly.
Where there can be passive investors and there can be people that do things to make it happen and get fees.
Right, I mean, if you
But
don't,
what's driving it for you, which I love, which is all I want to come hear you about, thank you so much for taking your time to do this.
oh, my pleasure, our
Was
pleasure.
this focus on the co-housing and how that interrelates with the senior issues, and it's really a beautiful thing. And I have some friends that are involved living in various places and watching it. It's been very interesting.
Yeah, there's one community in Davis,
Yeah.
I think one of the oldest ones, they came together out of a Unitarian church, and they're literally aging in place. They've been to there, I think, like 20 years or something like that. You know, some of them are now in their 80s, you know, and it's lovely.
Well, I looked at a place for sale in there a
Oh.
couple years ago. It was one of my first introductions to this concept. It was very interesting, showing up, not really understanding what it was about, and then the seller, it was for sale by owner, kind of educated me about the whole thing, and it was very interesting. And, you know, seeing it working, and seeing the sense of community just was manifested. It was, you know, very, very wonderful.
I mean, I just know my mom who passed last year, if she had been living in, you know, a tight-knit community, she, again, would have been so much happier. I mean, she was in assisted living, and there's caregivers and this and that, and you go to the dining room and you see your friends, but it's just different. You know, the way it was interesting, like when I was visiting, I was thinking, okay, here are some new people, but they don't hold circle to introduce the new people and have them, you know, get enmeshed in, you know, but if you were moving into a co-housing community where there's like 30 people, you're gonna be like loved up like instantly, you know, and it's a very different.
Family versus professional assisted living. It's really family.
Right.
It feels like living in a village or
Yeah.
the extended
Right.
Well, and
family.
the cost, I mean, having gone with both of my parents about having to make housing choices for them later in their lives, the costs were astounding for a lot of the continuing care retirement community type models where at the end of the day you don't own anything. I mean, on some of them, which is really amazing. I mean, you pay monthly for a lovely place to live, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's probably
Right.
a good option for a lot of people.
I mean,
but-
that's part of Spring Lake is that model.
Yeah. When our oldest member, Will, died in his 80s after having had a couple of strokes, he had been, before he had a stroke, he was out there with the jackhammer and the lawnmower and was involved with the Unitarian Church and politics and all kinds of stuff. Then he had his stroke and needed, you know, a lot of physical care. And the fact that he was there in community, living in the community, his caregiver he came to all the, you know, common dinners and the events and was still part of the community. His daughter had a daycare business in her home, and all the kids every day, that was part of their daily routine, was to go visit Grandpa Will, and all the kids would go visit him every day. And so it was a whole different way, you know, way of being while at the end of his life with those challenges than if he'd been, you know, somewhere else without everyone around. And he did die at home in the community, and it happened to be a holiday, and so all of us were home. So the whole community was there. The kids got to go in and say goodbye to Grandpa Will. And then we've had one other death on the property, a woman who had advanced cancer. And again, people took her to the doctor or, you know, set up with her and did stuff.
Takes a village, yep.
Yeah, now of course we have a more diverse age group, so I don't know what that feels like in practice when you're
right. Well, Oakland, Oakland is 55 to 75,
That's
so
true.
so you got
range,
a pretty range. I mean,
You usually
know.
have about 30-year span,
Yeah.
you know, in any, even if it's 55 and older. I mean, I'm ready to go. I'm gonna start early and have plenty of time there.
Because it's a lot harder to do it when you're 85, you know.
The
like,
transition's hard.
Yeah, exactly.
But getting even the caregivers enculturated into the community, and getting, as you were saying, you know, that the biggest difference here is keeping, however you deem family, let's call it for those that we don't choose, what we is creating that where it didn't exist, whether it's for the children who didn't have a grandfather, or the grandfather, or the older man who doesn't have any family.
That's exactly.
And this is the purpose of this whole thing. And there's so many different models of it. It's a dream come true to see these things start to pop up. And looking forward to being a part of this. But if it ends up, I also live in. But that's really the beauty of it, is what you just said. That's the story right there. That's the community.
Did everybody get to sign in?
I live in Marin.
I'm Marin and Sebastopol.
So you're currently looking for a site for this, and you haven't found a site yet. When you do, there'll be at least a 2-year feasibility study for soil.
Well, no, the feasibility study is in 2 years. What takes the long time is to get your approvals from whatever municipality, you know. But if we get a site that's entitled, like what makes Sonoma Mountain Village so appealing is not only is there like 200 acres to choose from, but it's all fully entitled, meaning they have all their approvals. So
Well,
all you
they
have
don't
to
have
do,
all of them. They have most of them.
Okay, they have
There's
most of
like
them.
a small little end of it. And what I would say is, it's not just so. We don't. I'd rather be wrong and have it done earlier. But the last thing I would want to do is say, oh yeah, we can do it in 2 years.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
It might be 2 years. It might be 3 or 4 or 5.
Construction
depending
alone.
on what's going on.
Yeah,
you know,
construction alone is 18 months. So just, you know, that's right off the bat. Construction is 18 months. And then, you know, before that, you've got your design and your drawing and permits, and you know, and I'm like her, I got to deliver bad news, and then if it's good news, great, you know.
And the advantage of that site is you're not going to have NIMBYs because it's already a great big empty site. Whereas we had neighbors on various sites who weren't entirely sure I don't know if they didn't like us. They didn't want anything to get built there.
Right,
you
that's
know,
just
it's when
really-
people, I
that's
walk my
really-
dog in this open space. I don't want you to build, you know,
Right.
a bunch of stuff on it. So
Right.
they had all of that stuff.
The
Actually,
ideal.
about dogs, these units do have yards for dogs, or dogs, I mean, is a dog-friendly environment?
Well, every community
Everybody decides.
Every community decides.
The community decides.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the policies you write, like the pet policy.
So you're
You
still
know.
owning, wherever you're doing this, it's gonna be a difference between wholly owning, not just your inside, but the unit that you're living in. So when you're talking about condominium life, that means that there's certain things that the community takes care of, the association takes care of, i.e. it could be a roof or a part of a roof, or it could be that lawn, or it could be that
Exactly.
playground. So in some communities, it sounds like it's, you do all your own house, you have to take care of your own roof, you have to, so they kind of vary in terms of how they're put together.
Right.
Based on what your research.
Right.
Some communities decide they really don't want to do gardening. Most people do. I've never heard one that
Right.
doesn't.
And that would be what they buy into.
And then they might invest what you would normally for a professional gardener, invest that in, you know, something else that is of, you know, value to the community.
Now, you might decide.
You can put this together. It's like,
Right. You know, the community might decide we want outside housekeepers to come in once a month for the community space to give it a real deep clean, because like we really don't want to do, you know, whatever. That's the beauty of it. The community kind of decides how it wants to spend its resources and be organized. Did I see another hand?
Which also means it's important when you get growing with a group that you get, you know, because you're not just buying a house.
Right.
You're becoming part of a community, so you have to, you know, connect with those people
Right.
and think, okay, can I live with these people? I walked into a meeting 18 years ago and fell in love with 8 people, and we're all still together, you know. Now that's my version. Probably not everybody in my community would have that same experience as I did, but yeah, we just liked we liked each other, and then so once you get your core group going, then when new people come to check it out, it's either, are these my people or not?
Right,
You
it's
know,
very
do I
self-selecting.
fit in this group or not? And what decisions you make you know, kind of help evolve what things end up
I can see that
being.
having crossing some lines too, because you just mentioned what happened in any environment, where it's an organization, it's not the other ones. If there's an underlying undercurrent of discriminatory, sort of really walks a fine line, like these people that, and, you know, it's like, well, we didn't like that.
Well, I think it's self-selecting.
It is, it feels like that.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine, you know, but you probably, you know, it's like, well, those are hard things. You know,
Yeah.
you would go to, but.
And people all in the group have a different experience of the group. And like any group of people, there's going to be, you know, some people who, for whatever reason, feel more on the edge versus, you know, more whatever. But then
Right.
but we at least all have the shared commitment to try and
Yeah.
work it out. And living that has made me a better person. Being in co-housing has made me a better person from having to learn how to, you know, not be
Right.
such a loudmouth and bossy pants, you know.
You might have
and
mentioned this
dominate
earlier,
people.
Linda, but one thing that you've shared with in other talks, that a lot of people who live in co-housing
Yeah,
are
introverts,
introverts,
yeah.
which I can't put myself in that category, but I do like my privacy, so that was my initial big deal about, you know.
That level of autonomy and privacy, but yet, I think what you said, and I think that speaks to people that are interested in probably being in the community, and myself, I thought, because it wouldn't necessarily dawn on me now, but in a few years that might change for me, as I mature in a different respect as well. So what I'm thinking is, you can still have your privacy and sort of pick and choose, yes, I'm gonna
Right.
go with it. I mean, like a homeowners association, you attend or you don't attend, but if something happens, don't be the one that complains.
That's
But
right,
it's-
that's right. That's right.
Right? So, I think that's, okay.
Anything else? Did everybody sign in the sheet so we can keep in touch with everybody? Did everybody sign in?
What's the website you were referring to, the national?
The national site?
I think if you just Google National
It's
Co-housing, but I think it's
cohousing.org.
cohousing.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of